Good evening, I'm Amirul Aiman. Here's what's making headlines tonight. China confirms fresh trade talks with the United States, set to take place in Malaysia this Friday. And India's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, will join the ASEAN summit virtually, officially ruling out a meeting with US President Donald Trump. All that and more coming up on Awani International. China and the United States are set to restart trade talks in Malaysia this Friday as both sides try to ease rising tensions ahead of a key leaders summit next week. Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng will meet US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Trade Representative Jameson Greer during his visit to Malaysia from 24th to 27 October.
China's Ministry of Commerce says He will also attend the ASEAN summit in Kuala Lumpur during the same period. The talks come after Washington expanded its blacklist of Chinese companies barred from buying American technology, a move that triggered Beijing to tighten its own restrictions on rare earth exports. US officials are expected to raise those export curbs during discussions with their Chinese counterparts. Relations between the two powers had recently shown signs of improvement after a September 19th phone call between US President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping just after a breakthrough at the Madrid summit over TikTok. But the latest trade dispute has cast doubt on that progress. For now, both sides are working to make sure the planned Trump-Xi summit in South Korea next week goes ahead as planned.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi rules out a possible meeting with United States President Donald Trump at the upcoming ASEAN summit in Kuala Lumpur as he plans to attend the event virtually. His decision to join online suggests that India and the US remain some distance away from finalizing a long-discussed trade deal.
Negotiations between the two nations have been underway for months, but progress has been slow. The talks have become increasingly complex due to India's continued imports of Russian oil, an issue that led Washington to impose a punitive 25% tariff on Indian goods in August, effectively doubling total duties to 50%. Modi confirmed his virtual participation on X, saying that he looked forward to attending the ASEAN India summit and to strengthening the comprehensive strategic partnership. Malaysian Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim explained that Modi would attend remotely because the summit coincides with Deepawali, which will be celebrated across India during the same period. Last week, Malaysia's foreign minister said Trump was expected to visit on the 26th of October, sparking speculation in India about a potential meeting between the two leaders. Meanwhile, Mint newspaper in India reported on Wednesday that both governments were close to reaching an agreement that could reduce tariffs on Indian imports to between 15 and 16%. However, the final outcome may hinge on unresolved issues related to energy and agriculture.
Stay with us, more updates coming your way right after the break.
Di dalam setiap berita yang dibawa, konteks amat penting. Kami sentiasa membawakan yang tergempar dan terkini. Pastikan Astro Awani menjadi pilihan anda, tidak kira di mana sahaja anda berada.
Welcome back. United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio has warned that Israel could be putting the US brokered Gaza ceasefire at risk after lawmakers advance a bill that paves the way annexing parts of West Bank. The move comes just weeks after President Donald Trump vowed to block any annexation plan and as Vice President J.D. Vance visits Israel to help reinforce the fragile truce.
Despite opposition from Prime Ministers Benjamin Netanyahu and his Likud party, Lawmakers in Israel's 120-seat Knesset narrowly voted 25 to 24 to move the bill forward, the first of 4 votes needed for it to become law. Hamas has condemned the move, calling it a reflection of what it described as the ugly face of colonial occupation. Annexing the West Bank would effectively end hopes for a two-state solution, long backed by the United Nations. Members of Netanyahu's coalition have long pushed for formal annexation, citing biblical and historical claims to the land. But the UN's top court ruled in 2024 that Israel's occupation and settlement expansion are illegal and urged its withdrawal from the territory.
The United Nations top court has ruled that Israel is legally obliged to ensure basic humanitarian needs in Gaza, including food, water, fuel, and medical supplies. The International Court said Israel, as an occupying power, must also support UN relief efforts in the territory.
In its advisory opinion, the panel of 11 judges said Israel has a duty under international law to make sure Gaza's population receives essential aid and to allow UN agencies, including the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, to carry out their work. Presiding Judge Yuji Iwasawa said supplies vital for survival, such as food, water, shelter, fuel, and medical services, must be guaranteed. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres welcomed the ruling, calling it an important step toward easing the suffering in Gaza. The court also said starvation cannot be used as a weapon of war, noting that people in Gaza still aren't getting enough aid. Israel has rejected the court's opinion, saying it already follows international law. Palestinian officials say the decision shows Israel has fallen short of its humanitarian obligations, pointing to months when aid trucks were blocked from entering Gaza.
The United States has announced more sanctions on Russia as the White House accuses Russian President Vladimir Putin of stalling peace efforts with Ukraine. The new sanctions on 2 of Russia's largest oil companies, Rosneft and Lukoil, were unveiled one day after plans for a summit between US President Donald Trump and Putin fell apart.
But that'll be a big one. We canceled the meeting with President Putin. It didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel like we were going to get to the place we have to get, so I canceled it. Look, these are tremendous sanctions. These are very big. Those are against their 2 big oil companies, and we hope that they won't be on for long. We hope that the war will be settled.
The sanctions target Russia's biggest energy firms, which together export more than 3 million barrels of oil per day. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the companies fund the Kremlin's war machine. Speaking alongside NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte at the White House, Trump defended the timing, saying he hoped the move would push both sides towards negotiations. The UK also imposed similar sanctions last week, with Chancellor Rachel Reeves declaring there is no place for Russian oil on global markets. Moscow has condemned the latest actions, warning that energy sanctions could hurt developing nations and drive up fuel prices worldwide. Still, Trump said he remains open to future talks with Putin if there is real progress toward peace. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova, in response, said that U.S. energy sanctions are extremely counterproductive and hinders negotiation progress on Ukraine. Following the cancelled Putin-Trump meeting, Moscow said it remains open to talks with Washington on next steps in bilateral relations and resolving the crisis. Separately, Russia warned it will respond painfully if the EU seizes its assets in Euroclear accounts, calling any confiscation theft. The warning comes as the European Commission considers using frozen Russian assets to provide a €140 billion reparation loan to Ukraine, covering much of Kyiv's funding needs for 2026 and 2027.
Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro says his country has 5,000 Russian-made surface-to-air missiles deployed at strategic locations nationwide to counter U.S. forces in the Caribbean. This comes as U.S. President Donald Trump has said he's weighing military action inside Venezuela as part of a counter-drug trafficking campaign and a broader effort to weaken Maduro, a longtime foe of Washington.
Speaking at a televised military ceremony on Wednesday, Maduro said the short-range Igla-S missiles are a key part of Venezuela's air defense network. They can shoot down small aerial targets such as cruise missiles and drones, as well as helicopters and low-flying planes. The U.S. has deployed over 4,500 Marines and sailors to the Caribbean to strengthen operations against cartels and demonstrate military power. It has carried out several lethal strikes on boats off the Caribbean coast that it alleges were trafficking narcotics. Maduro condemned the U.S. actions as a violation of sovereignty. Last week, Trump said he had authorized the CIA to conduct covert action in Venezuela and said the U.S. was considering expanding its military campaign to land as part of an intensifying U.S. pressure campaign that officials say is aimed at ousting Maduro.
Over in Colombia, tensions are rising as United States President Donald Trump and Colombian President Gustavo Petro exchange sharp words. Trump has called his South American counterpart a thug who is making a lot of drugs after Petro threatened to sue him in U.S. courts.
The dispute escalated on Wednesday when Trump announced he was suspending all U.S. military aid to Colombia, accusing the country of involvement in drug trafficking. Last weekend, Trump also labeled Petro a drug trafficking leader and threatened tariff hikes on Colombian exports. In response, Petro accused the U.S. president of breaking trade agreements and acting like a king in Latin America. Bogota has since recalled its ambassador to Washington, with Petro declaring that Colombia will not support any U.S. military intervention in neighboring Venezuela.
This week on Wu Says, we ask a defining question: can ASEAN stay neutral in a multipolar world? As rivalry between the United States and China intensifies, Southeast Asia faces growing pressure to take sides, even as it seeks stability and strategic autonomy. Professor Emeritus Datuk Dr. Wu Wing Tai explains why a neutral ASEAN, supported by other middle powers, may be the region's best hope to avoid becoming a proxy in great power competition.
If the tensions were to go up, it becomes more important than ever for us to get as many other groups of other middle powers to join us in being neutral and picking sides on an issue-by-issue basis, because we do not want to be caught in a proxy war between the two powers. So the role of ASEAN by itself is not enough to affect the behavior of the two major powers. But if Malaysia, Brazil, South Africa, and Nigeria are able to work together, pushing for the maintenance, we operate according to the principles of the United Nations and the principles of WTO. In other words, China, Russia, and the US may have conflict with each other, but then we will, among ourselves, we will not repeat what the struggles that they are engaged in. They can put tariffs against each other, but we are not going to put tariffs against ourselves or to take a stand on anything but multilateral free trade system of WTO.
Catch the full conversation on Awani International and across our social media platforms.
That report wraps up Awani International for tonight. Stay with us as we track the strategies and power shifts shaping the new global order. For more updates, visit international.astroawani.com and follow us on social media. I'm Amirul Aiman. Thank you for watching and good night.